Hey everybody, Bob Smythe here. I am the Republican candidate for the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives in the 165th District, which comprises Marple, Morton, Radnor, and Springfield. And today I'm starting a new series of videos that I'm calling FYI, or For Your Information. And basically what I'm doing here is, as I've been out meeting folks, making phone calls, also based off of some of the messages on Facebook and social media and emails that I've received, it seems like a lot of people in the district have kind of the same concerns and questions with regard to some of the stuff that's coming out of the state. And so I thought I would do some videos to help share out that information so that we can answer a lot of people's questions and everyone has the information that they need. Before I get into today's topic, I first want to shout out Tavani's Barbershop for the awesome t-shirt that they're making to kind of bring some money in due to the fact that they've been closed for so long. So Tavani's Barbershop, it's an amazing place in Springfield Township, originally out of Ridley. They're great folks that run the place. It's a true staple of the community. If you don't know Tavani's Barbershop, then you may not be from Delco. You might want to check on that. So shout out to my buddy Nick Stamolis, who brought me the shirt and delivered it after he picked it up there. So check them out. Make sure you're supporting your local business because they are the foundation of our community, which is kind of what we're going to talk about today. So the first issue that I thought I would talk about that I've been getting a lot of questions about is House Resolution 836. And so what is it? This is a resolution that came out of our House and our Senate in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to end the concurrent COVID-19 emergency declaration, which was issued by Governor Wolf early on in the COVID-19 pandemic, way back in, I believe, February is when it came out. So the goal of this resolution is to end that, to end the emergency declaration. That's what it is. That's the purpose. The other purpose, or kind of deeper purpose, is to give or ensure that at our state government we have checks and balances. And this is where I get into a little bit of the history teacher in me. One of the great things about our government that makes it so incredible and at the time that it was started so revolutionary is the checks and balances part. That no one part of our government should have ultimate power, right? That any branch of our government can be checked by the other parts or branches. And so that's really what this is about. It's ensuring that the governor's office or the legislative branch of our Commonwealth does not have ultimate power or too much power, that the other bodies, which represent us, the people, have the ability to check that. So that's what's going on here. I've seen some kind of myths or misconceptions or some of the questions that I've got, and I just want to run through them real quick. So the first one is that the governor has to sign this, right? Hey, it doesn't really matter whether or not it passes. The governor's not going to sign it, just like a bill. If he doesn't sign it, it goes back to the House or the Senate. That is not true, okay? By nature of our state constitution and by the nature of the fact that this is a resolution, the governor does not have to sign it. So if someone is saying that they didn't vote for it because the governor wasn't going to sign it, that's really irrelevant by nature of the fact that it's a resolution and it's trying to end his emergency declaration. And I have copies or screenshots, if you will, of the Pennsylvania state constitution, which illustrate this, which I'll throw up. So he does not have to sign it. The next thing, if the state ends the emergency declaration, we will lose access to federal aid. That's also not necessarily true. The first part of that is, being as though the state was in a state of emergency during the peak of the COVID-19 virus, we are entitled to some of the funding, to some funding from the federal government to help us deal with the effects of that virus. We are going to be, whether it's in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania or any other state or the country, we are going to be feeling the effects, particularly economically, of this virus and the steps that we took to combat it for an extended period of time. To say that we have to then stay in an emergency declaration for the extent of the time that we're going to be feeling these effects is simply illogical. Right? It will not work. We will be in a far worse situation by that point than we would have been otherwise. So because we were in a state of emergency, we already have guaranteed access to some of that federal money, right? Regardless of whether or not we are still in it down the line, if we're still feeling the effects of the results of the things that we've done and the effects that this virus has had on us. The other thing is A number of federal aid money has been included in our state budget, guaranteeing that we will have it, right? The budget that was just passed, so that will be available. The other thing that I've heard is if we remove the emergency declaration, it will end some of the guidelines from our health department, like wearing masks and things like that. That's also not true. Our state health department has an authority outside of an emergency declaration. The state health department can make recommendations and implement restrictions and countermeasures outside of the necessity of an emergency declaration. So that's also not true. Another thing that I've heard, or a question that I've gotten, is if we end the state of emergency declaration, it will end unemployment and other assistance programs from the federal government. That's also not necessarily true. There is some truth to it, right? If we end the state of emergency declaration, it will end our access to some of those programs, okay? Now, let's think about that for a second. If you are unfortunately in a situation where you've had to get access to some of these programs, from the people that I've spoken to, it has not been an extremely efficient process, right? A lot of the folks that I've talked to are still unable, to this day, have been unable or are unable to get access to these funds, right? Or some of these monies. The information with regard to where they are, does it apply to you, right? All of those things, it's not as readily available as we would like it to be. Now, I'm not blaming anybody for this, right? It was an unprecedented situation where we had to really change some of the things that we were doing and implement new programs on the fly, right? I get it. The other thing is, historically, there was not a need for a large workforce in some of these departments because there weren't that many. The amount of people that now need them has increased dramatically, right? So I get it. The point is, they're not working that great right now, okay? The other thing is, one of the reasons why we need so many of these programs is because folks can't go to work. If we open back up and end the emergency declaration and people go back to work, we logically would not need as many of these programs because folks would be back at work. They would be making money, getting paid, and thus not need some of these programs. So if it's going to end some of these programs, would we really still need them if we were open? Okay. Finally, on a personal note, one of the things that bugs me the most about this whole conversation is the way that small businesses are being treated and or perceived. And I have a kind of a real personal problem with that. As there has been a real inequity with regard to what businesses have been allowed to be open and why. It has not been that transparent, and in my opinion, and I have a real issue with it. Some of the big box stores that have been open kind of throughout this whole thing, I don't have a problem with them being open, right? Folks need to go to the grocery store. Folks need to have a place to go to get stuff. I'm not somebody that has a problem with somebody going to a Home Depot during this thing and getting a can of paint, right, to paint their house. We ask people to stay in their house for 3 months. Folks need something to do. That's fine. But why a Home Depot can be open and a small hardware store in your local community can't be open, that doesn't make sense to me. And it seems to me that the messaging with this is, oh, barbershops aren't essential. Why should they be able to be open? You don't need a haircut, right? Well, it's not about getting a haircut, right? Although there is something to be said for the public health, the public good, right? It's the little things that keep us out of depression, anxiety. Folks are really stressed out right now with everything going on. Depression's on the rise. Suicide's on the rise. But the fact that for those small businesses, it's not necessarily about a haircut. It's about people being able to put food on the table, to support their families, right? To pay their bills, and to keep alive a business that they may have built from the ground up. Their heart, their soul, their sweat, and their blood is in those businesses. And we need to protect them, and we can't have them going under because they are the foundation of our communities, okay? They are a massive part of our communities. And to imply, as some of our elected officials have, that a small business is motivated by profit so that they aren't motivated or they don't care about the personal well-being of their customers, to me is insulting, and it's completely ridiculous. Our small businesses absolutely care about their customers because their customers are their neighbors, their friends, their family members. They're the part of our community. As a public school teacher and a volunteer firefighter, when we need help with something, it's the small businesses that come to our aid. They're the ones that step up for our community and have forever. They're the ones that support local sports programs, youth clubs, right? Boy Scouts, whatever. They're the ones that support them, not the government. And that's one of the things that I think we all need to learn from this experience is local leadership is very important. And we can't always rely on the government to come to our aid. Sometimes we need to rely on each other at the local level. Our neighbors, they're the ones that come to our aid, and they have. We have done a tremendous job in the 165th in backing each other up, coming together and helping one another, caring for another. Food drives, that comes from the people and some of the small businesses donating stuff, right? That's who kept everyone together in this thing. And so to say now that they're incapable of handling this situation, again, to me is ridiculous. I have full faith in our small business community that they can get opened and they can do it in a safe and responsible way for everyone. So that's my personal take on this whole thing. Unfortunately, our current representative did vote no on this resolution, and right now it did pass in the House and the Senate. Right now it's tied up in litigation. The governor has involved the courts, and it's going to be up to the PA Supreme Court. So we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully the Supreme Court will do the right thing, and we can get opened and start to get back to work here as soon as possible, because it is extremely important for the health and well-being of our communities that we do that. If anyone does need assistance with some of these programs or does have more questions, please reach out. If you'd like to see me do a video on another issue or topic, an FYI thing, let me know. Shoot me an email or a message. Until then, I hope that everyone stays healthy, stays well, and stays Delco strong.